So my name's Brianna Paulino, and today is May 8th, and I'm interviewing Carol Hammond. So why don't you start by telling us when you started at Yavapai?
Well, I started in 1983 as an adjunct faculty member. I was 5 months pregnant at the time, and did that for several years, and then I was a sabbatical replacement for a year. And finally in 1987 I was hired full-time as an English faculty member and have been that ever since up until this year, and now I'm on a phased retirement contract so that I'm teaching half-time for the next couple of years.
So what did your original job entail?
Well, when I was hired, I was actually, part of my job description besides teaching English was to act as a liaison with the library, because all of the library orientations were done through the English department, and they wanted some new ideas, and so I worked very closely for a couple of years with the library people to set up some programs.
Okay, and can you describe your job now in contrast?
Well, it has evolved quite a bit over the years, and of course at any community college the primary thing is teaching composition. And so I taught full-time, and for several years taught 5 composition classes a semester. And then I've done other jobs at the college at different times, so that I haven't always been teaching a full load.
Okay.
For instance, I was an academic advisor for 3 years, and I loved doing that. And then when I was a department head for the English department, I did that for 4 years, and I took a little hiatus from teaching to be outcomes assessment coordinator, and part of that was really helping faculty, mentoring faculty to learn how to incorporate different kinds of assessments into the classroom. So I did that for 3 years.
Okay. So how did you end up at Yavapai College? What drew you here?
Well, I was drawn to Prescott, not the college.
Okay.
And my husband and I were living in Southern California, and I was a high school teacher. And we had a daughter in 1981, and we just decided that we didn't want to raise her in the environment we were in. And a friend said, why don't you check out Prescott, Arizona? And so we took a vacation here and fell in love with the community. So we moved to be in a small town to raise our children. And then it was just fortuitous, great luck that once I got here, I was able to get a job at the college.
Okay. What was Yavapai like when you started, as far as atmosphere and students?
Well, I've been thinking about that question because it really has changed in a lot of ways. One clearly is physically. And when I started here in the early 1980s, one of the nicknames of various parts of the campus was the bunker, because it was very much concrete, not a lot of vegetation. It was very sterile, and it seemed like a very small place. And I don't think it was very student-friendly in terms of just a sense of place. There weren't a lot of spots where students could sit outside and read or meet with each other, and so it wasn't all that physically inviting. And of course, now I just marvel when I come to campus at how beautiful it is and how we have these gorgeous new buildings, and I think what a gift to the community it's been to have this change in the campus and have students come here and feel like they're almost at a university, that they have everything right at their fingertips.
So how would you say the students themselves have changed? Like, was there a different age?
Well, generally no. But when I first started here, Coconino County did not have a community college. And so we had, for instance, a lot of Native American students who lived in Coconino County who came here to go to school, and we also had a lot of international students who were traveling to this country and wanted a small town where they would feel safe. And I think both of those have changed quite a bit. Coconino now has its own community college, and many of the students from the reservation go there. And so I think we have a smaller group of Native Americans. After 9/11, I think that had a big impact on the ability of international students to get visas. It was harder for them to come. And so, for instance, we used to have a lot of Japanese students. And we have quite a bit fewer Japanese students, and they were all young. Many of them were 18 and 19-year-olds who their TOEFL scores weren't good enough for them to, their English skills needed honing. And now most of our students from other countries, I think they're people who live in the area. I have a student who is from the Czech Republic, but she's lived here for 25 years. And so the international students I have are older than they used to be. But I think generally speaking, we still get a multi-generational group. I've taught one family, I've taught the grandmother, the daughter-in-law, and the granddaughter.
Oh, wow.
You know, and I think that part of it hasn't changed. We still have a huge draw from our own county.
Mm-hmm. So would you say that it's been different kinds of students as far as mindsets or like majors? Or?
Well, I think there has been somewhat of a change because I think technology has had a lot to do with that. And when I first came here, I certainly didn't have a computer, and I didn't teach in a computer classroom. And I'm only saying that affected the students because they have those same things at home. And the students today that are 18 to 20, they've been raised on a lot of things. And cell phones, I'm sure you've heard, they drive us nuts. Even though there's a rule they don't have in the classroom, every once in a while I'll catch them text messaging, and I've never even text messaged. So I feel like kind of like a dinosaur. And some of the technologies that are communication vehicles for students today. So I feel a little bit of gap there, and I think the ease with which students use all those different technologies today. And of course, we didn't have online learning then, and so I teach online courses, and that's been a huge adjustment for someone like me. I love being in the classroom. I love facilitating class discussions and having students present projects orally, and just the spontaneity that comes when you have a good interchange of ideas. And it's a real challenge of how to interpret that through an online environment. And it's just a continuous learning for me. How can I revamp my classes to provide more of that interchange among the students without, a sterile environment for them online?
So did you ever think that you would teach an online class?
No, because I actually avoided computers for a very long time, and then when it became obvious that was the wave of the future, and I had small children at the time, the way I eased myself into computers was by playing games. And so I got hooked on playing some interactive games, and once I did that and felt comfortable with it, now it's just second nature to me. And I have a laptop at home, and I do most of my work, do a lot of research online, and feel very comfortable with the technologies of that. And I found YouTube this year and really enjoyed incorporating that into my classes, although I don't have a clue as to whether, they've actually visited all of the sites that I put in there. I'll have to do some surveying at the end of the semester.
So what did you think when you were first asked to do an online class?
Well, one thing I've always liked about the college is that, and teaching in general, is you're often provided with new opportunities. You never have, it's not a stale profession, Mm-hmm. You not only have new students every semester, but if somebody offers you a chance to do something new, it's a way to really revitalize what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And so I think I taught one of the first online classes for the English department. It's probably 12 years ago. And so I really accepted that as an opportunity just to try something new. And, some things work really well, and I've become very comfortable with it, and others I'm just tinkering with all the time, and you have to be humble. My computer crashed at home 2 weeks ago, and I knew exactly how students feel. I felt like that my hands had been cut off. I had to go back and forth to work every day, and I don't live that close to town. And having that ease of being able to walk across my house and sit down at the computer and communicate with students, having that gone really felt like a handicap. So I understand when students have those problems, how frustrated they get.
Yeah. So are the students that take online classes different from the students in class, or are they more working parents, or is it just...
Well, I think it varies, and some students, clearly it works better than for others. And the first couple of years that I taught online, I really had many students who just, they had no other way to get an education, and I think that's what kept me with it. You know, I had a young mother who had like a 2-month-old baby, and the only way that she could take that class was online. And so I felt like we had an obligation, a responsibility to get those students who otherwise wouldn't be able to take classes. Right now, like my World Lit class that's online, the students are so savvy and sophisticated, and they're wonderful students, and they've had other classes online, so the learning curve was very small. I have a student who was a Yavapai College student who moved to Colorado, and he's able to finish up his classes, but from there I have students in Phoenix. But I also have had students who were beginner students who really didn't have the reading skills yet and didn't have that savvy with technology. For instance, a young single mother with 2 children, and she worked, didn't have a computer at home, and she signed up at the last minute, and it was the only class that was open. And so for her, I felt like this, you know, she had no choice, and she wasn't successful because she didn't have any of the study skills and the opportunities to have easy access. She thought she could just come to a library on the weekend and be able to stay caught up, and she was just overwhelmed. And I felt really badly for her. So I think the more we can really counsel students as to what it means to be an online student and how much extra work it really is. I mean, to sell it as an easy way to get an education, that's just simply not true.
So do you find that a lot of students expect it to be easy?
I'm not really all that sure. Like I say, the ones for whom it's new, I think they do think it's going to be easier because they can work around their schedules. Right. But you're making a time commitment, even though you can get up at 5 o'clock on a Saturday morning and do it. You still have the readings to do, and you still have family commitments. And so I think oftentimes they really do underestimate how much of a time commitment it is to do it that way.
So backing up a little earlier, you mentioned the community. Do you think that the community supports Yavapai more now than they did when it started, or how has that changed? I take a really, really strong responsibility for the community and community college. Mm-hmm. I think it's almost democracy in action. There are many countries in the world where people don't get a second chance. You know, if they're poor students, they're kind of separated out and they don't get to go to college, and that affects their whole life. And here we've got this wonderful system that allows people to take second chances, to change their careers, whether it's retired veterans or people who've had accidents and they have to find a new career or whatever. And so to me, the community that we serve, we have sort of a reciprocal relationship with them. I mean, we reflect the community, and we're not a university, we're not a private school, and so we have to meet the needs of a very large geographic district. At the same time, we have expertise that allows us to project ahead, because if all we're doing is serving the current needs of community, then that community is losing the vitality of growth in new directions. And so I think a large part of what we do as a community college is anticipate the trends and the needs that come down the road, so that we're serving the next generation of students in the best way we can. So do you find that the community tends to influence what kinds of classes and
Well, I think they should influence. I mean, I think we should provide what is needed. Mm-hmm. And you know, we have a college mission, and it has different parts to it. And so unlike a university that may feel that its primary mission is to undergraduate students and their graduate programs, we're not only committed to providing the beginning steps of a 4-year college, but we also are trying to create an atmosphere of lifelong learning. And so I think that if you look at the kinds of programs we have, that's a huge challenge to meet the needs of people throughout their whole lives, whereas another university or a private college has a very narrow focus and can do it really, really well. You know, and so I think we do a really good job of providing what our community wants at the same time that we recognize we can't do everything for everybody. And so we, you know, pick the areas that support our mission and provide those for, you know, people from 8 to 80.
Right. So how have the programs evolved in relation to that? Like you start with basic programs and...
Well, some of the programs that we have now, who would have thunk it? I mean, the idea that we have out in Chino Valley agriculture programs where they're doing really state-of-the-art hydroponics and green technology and building. I mean, these are just wonderful resources for the community, and we're training people for a generation to come that's going to understand what it means to be environmentally sensitive.
Right.
You know, but still, at the core of everything is our gen ed program and the general education classes that we provide to everybody so that they have a good foundation for whatever direction they take after they leave here. And I think we do a good job on that.
So how is the faculty different now than what you started with? Is that pretty much the same, or have you gotten more advanced and experienced faculty? Or?
Well, that's an interesting question, and part of it comes from my having been here so long.
Right.
Because when I started here, I would consider myself young. I was in my 30s, and I had 2 toddlers, and so I kind of grew up with the college. And I've been here 20-something years now, and so I knew what it felt like to be young and inexperienced. I wasn't an inexperienced teacher. I had been a high school teacher for 10 years, but I had never taught at a college. Mm-hmm. And so it took me a long time to feel like I deserved to be here. If you can understand what that means, I felt like I had to prove myself. Mm-hmm. And there were a lot of really powerful mentors in my life here at the college who nurtured me and gave me what I needed to do to get that experience. And I think that's always been a huge part of the faculty commitment to professionalism, that we kind of pass things on and share what works and pat people on the back when it doesn't work. And I don't think that has changed. You know, certainly I've watched people retire and we get new people in, and we have a whole host of young faculty right now who have brand new ideas that, you know, that we're lucky to have. But I think that's probably pretty true of any institution of higher learning.
So do the new faculty members tend to change the way things run, or is it more just like built on it?
Oh, I hope they change the way things run. I mean, it's an incredible balance of how do you use the culture of the institution and its history to learn new things. And you can't, there is a personality that a college has. Mm-hmm. And I don't think anyone wants to come in and just change that personality. We'd get pretty schizophrenic if each new group of faculty came in and did that. But on the other hand, we try to hire people because they can bring new ideas to the college, and we want them to bring innovation and a change of perspective. Just like I said about the community, we don't want a stagnant community just because we have people who have done things one way. We want to learn from the new people that come in too.
Yeah, definitely. So how have the extracurricular activities reflected the new programs and teachers and faculty? And
whose extracurricular activities?
All the clubs and...
Well, I think we probably have more clubs than we've had before. One example of a program that has just flowered and blossomed over the years is the college newspaper. Uh-huh. And it has gone through struggles over time where I think we even disbanded the paper for a couple of years. Wow. And of course, when you have a turnover at a two-year college, having leadership is difficult because students come and go, and how do you kind of maintain that continuity? And right now we have a newspaper that is flourishing, and it's won awards for 2 years. And I love bringing that paper into the classroom because it has wonderful writing. The topics are much more interesting than they were at one time. I mean, it really has, it's a high quality product that our students and the sponsor, the Colette Strasberg, they've just done a wonderful job. So I think there's many clubs on campus that provide tremendous service to the community, like the paralegal students have a club that does clinics The nursing faculty, I mean, every one of the programs has some kind of a club that, or extracurricular activity that provides sort of the hands-on application of what you're learning in the classroom, and everybody benefits from that.
So what clubs or programs have you personally?
At various times, I at one time worked with the International Club. Travel is one of the huge parts of my family's life, and I love meeting people from other countries and other cultures. So I've gone on trips with the international students. At one time, I've given talks in different classes. I spoke to the honors program one year and then went with the honors program on a trip that they took. I haven't done huge amounts of extracurricular clubs here because for 15 to 18 of the years that I was here, I was raising children. And so, talk about schizophrenic. I'd drop my kids at school, come here, and then my extracurricular would be going to watch their games, and participating as any parent would try to in the life of my children. And so sometimes I could bring them into it, like we would go to soccer games together, and I remember going to basketball games in the Storm Center with my kids where they would get so excited and be rooting for the team. But generally that part of the college life I haven't been as involved in as others.
Okay. Can you describe for me one of the best experiences you've had at Yavapai College? Something that changed your perspective or made a lasting impression?
Well, I'm a teacher first and foremost, and I've told this story many times, but the first year I was a teacher, I rode the bus to work every day, and I would grade papers on the bus just so everybody would know I was a teacher. And so I'm always going to respond to that and thinking about experiences in the classroom. And almost every semester I have a student who may have challenges that he or she faces with such strength and persistence that they're a model for me. And I have one student right now that has real health issues, and she just plugs away, and I look at her every day, and that just makes me want to, to move on. So just the experience of being in the classroom with students who sometimes they come here not knowing what they want to do or why they're here, and seeing them click into it and suddenly have that light bulb go on. Not just that they've learned something new, but that they have a direction to go to now, that they suddenly realize what they can be thinking about after they leave here. I love running into students after 5 or 6 years and have them be enthusiastic about what they're doing and tell me what their successes are. Those are things that are really big to me. Camaraderie with the faculty, I think that's some of my best experiences have come from sharing with other faculty members. It's not like huge things. It's the day-to-day kinds of positive interactions with people that have been the best experience for me.
So on the flip end of that, what would you say has been like a worse experience or something that you would like to forget?
This is really going to date me, and we want to be honest here. When I first came, we had a college president who was hard to work with, and the atmosphere was very adversarial. It was divisive, and the faculty decided on a vote of no confidence in that president. And being fairly new, that was really hard for me to deal with. I'm kind of a peacemaker, and I'm very uncomfortable with dissension and argument. And so I felt like my stomach was on a constant churn. And that's where the community really kicked in, because we were able to present a case for why we made our vote of no confidence. And the community completely organized around us and supported the faculty. And so even though it was a painful experience for everyone, we were able to feel like the community understood what our grievances were. And the president eventually moved on to somewhere else. So I think that was the most uncomfortable, intensely dramatic, hard experience to go through. And luckily, that doesn't happen all that often anymore.
So
Things are pretty...
Sorry. It sounds like the faculty really band together.
They did. We did, I should say. That was critical to it. And oftentimes when we felt like administratively that we were adversaries in a fight to the death with that institutional part of it, we always knew we could go into our own divisions and sit in our faculty meetings, and that we got some kind of island of sanity, as we talked about. And we never let it affect the classroom. And I think we were lauded for that when we had people come in. They recognized that we didn't take the fight in and try to polarize the students, that we did our job, and that this was something outside of the classroom, and we did our job well, and that we tried to shield the students from that antagonism that was going on.
So do the students ever feel the effects of faculty issues, or is that pretty much separate?
Well, I think that's what it means to be a professional educator. Okay,
Right.
and so it's somewhat similar. I mean, like, I don't think institutional issues that are administrative or that have to do with governance, I don't think that's something, this is my personal position, that should be taken into the classroom. But part of our jobs is if there are larger issues that are cultural issues or that may be touchy, and to look at the political race that's going on right now and questions about race and gender, that if we don't tackle those in some way, we're doing a disservice to our students, because we're ignoring some of the larger civic and cultural hotspots that they should educate themselves about. And so I think what part of our job is to present those issues and provide a safe place for students to take risks. Isn't that a funny way to put it? But, provide a forum where students can fight out those issues and think critically and learn how to put emotion aside and to open their minds without the faculty putting their own personal positions into the fray. It doesn't mean they don't know what your position is. I think different people handle it differently. But it's having respect for your students' positions. But if we don't allow those kinds of conversations to take place on controversial issues, then we're doing a disservice to our students, as far as I'm concerned. So how can they vote responsibly if we don't talk about those things in the classroom?
Yeah. So have you found there's a lot of cultural issues over the years, and even just in the college? Or?
Well, I don't think, part of our dilemma in Yavapai County is, again, we are a fairly large rural area. And many of our students haven't had opportunities to travel outside of the county. And so it's very easy, and you can understand why, to have a kind of parochial perspective. If you've never left the county, then you tend to think that those things that are important to you are important to everybody.
Right.
And so being able to open up that world and show them that term globalization, that's what getting on the internet does. That's what instant communication, television, different kinds of media do. And so we have to really help students to see how they fit into both the scheme of their own community and the larger world. How do they connect with that larger world? So I just realized one of the classes I really loved teaching was I team taught a liberal studies connections class on global issues, particularly women's issues. And we, just really opened up to what does it mean to be a woman in this country? What are some of the gender issues that we face? But what does it mean to be a woman who totes water for 4 hours every day in an African village? How can we understand what her perspective on the world is? And so I think that was a wonderful opportunity for students to look through the minds and eyes of people who are very different than they are.
So I know in personal experiences, I've found that the farther we get into the elections and everything, the more open-minded everyone becomes. Have you found that over the years to be that way, or has it stayed?
That's kind of tricky, and I've been having conversations with my own students about this, because I have several students who have taken kind of controversial positions on issues that they feel very, very, very strongly about. and they are enthusiastic and idealistic about sharing those positions. And part of my job is to get them to understand, how do you craft language and use it to communicate with people so that you can open their minds to what you believe without feeling like they have to believe what you believe.
Right.
And so that's difficult for anybody. And so how do we just open the door to looking at the world in a little bit different way so that we can accept ideas that may be really, really oppositional to the way we were raised or how we've thought of things before. And I think that's what education is, is making new meaning out of what you're learning and putting it together with your experience and seeing the world in a new way. Mm-hmm. So I mean, if change isn't taking place, then to me that's one of the definitions of education is, how you change through these exposure to new ideas and language and other people.
So, do you find students reflect the values of the community?
Well, I think for the most part, but like this one class I have right now, there's a student who, the student I was talking about, he has some pretty radical ideas that I should say, as being a fairly traditional person in my 50s, that I look at that and I think, boy, that's a little out there. I'm not sure if I'm comfortable with that. Yeah. And so I remember a student in that same class the first week, I gave a reading from a newspaper, and she really reacted strongly because she felt that she described it as a liberal rag, and that she and her husband would never have a subscription to that newspaper. It's the New York Times. Mm-hmm. And based on the fact that the article came from the New York Times, she assumed that the writer was this liberal, radical person out to change the world, when in fact he's a highly respected spokesman for the conservative point of view. And so I had a conversation with my husband. How do I approach this to have this be a learning experience for that student without putting her down or singling her out? And so I was able to get on the internet with the students and say, if we're going to analyze this piece of writing, we should know something about the author, right? Because if we don't know something about the author, we might not understand the perspective or the biases that are going on. And so I Googled the author, and I said, oh, look, here's the author that we just looked at, and he's known to be a conservative thinker. He often shows up on these programs. And you could see her face when she realized she had made all of these assumptions, faulty assumptions, based on her perception not of anything about the author, but of the newspaper. And she raised her hand, and bless her heart, she said, boy, did I ever get it wrong. And so that was a great learning opportunity for us then to talk about bias and how you want to look at different points of view and make sure you know what that bias is when you're reading or when you're listening to someone. So that was a great activity. But there's a lot of variety in terms of their points of view.
So it sounds like you have a really huge variety of students. And something that I've often wondered is, do you have a lot of disabled students in your classes, or students with disabilities?
I have over the years, and again, that's been a learning experience for me. I had a student who was blind, legally blind. He could see, but he had a little machine where a piece of writing, he may only be able to see one word at a time because the magnification. And he was a wonderful student and very enthusiastic, but I found that the best way that I could accommodate him was I used to give a lot of little pop quizzes at the beginning of my class, is that I would just catch him coming in the door, and I would stand out there with him, and I would just ask him the questions really fast. And he could answer me just like that, where if he had come into the classroom and sat down and tried to read those questions, it would have taken him all class just to read the questions. And so I think, and I have a student right now who's on oxygen all the time, and she has real health issues. And I've had students who are brain damaged from different kinds of accidents who were relearning their brains. And so all that is how can we approach learning with enough flexibility to give those students access. And I think, that as long as we're open about it with each other. I had a student who was deaf that didn't tell me that she was deaf, and I was doing it over to the Verdi on television. And so if she had just said to me, it's really important that you do this when you're talking on the television, I could have accommodated her. But it got to the point where I only found out it was a problem when she complained, rather than having her, get me on the page right from the beginning. I think I could have done a much better job of helping her out.
So do you think the resources now for helping students with disabilities are better than when you started?
I think they're better. We have better technology. Mm-hmm. I had a student last semester who lives at the VA, and he had a terrible accident, and he was online, and he had to wear a cast on his arm for about 2 months, and he came to see me and said, I can't type. It's not that I want to drop the class, but it's really a problem. And I was able to say to him, go to the Learning Center, sit down with the advisor, and find out what kind of adaptive you have. And that saved him. He went into the Learning Center and was able to use a voice recognition computer, and he stuck with the class, and I accommodated him with some deadlines, and he was very successful in finishing the class. And so those adaptive technologies didn't exist 20 years ago, but it's still the people, and how we interact, and I knew that I could send him to the Learning Center. I knew someone would help him there, and that access to people resources, I don't think it's changed all much, but it's more visible than it used to be.
Do you think there's still room for more improvement with students with disabilities?
Well, sure. And, you asked about changes in the college. When I first came here, we didn't have elevators.
Oh, wow.
And so for a student who had a physical handicap where they couldn't walk, what a challenge. I mean, what we try to do is give them a class schedule where they didn't have to move around too much. But I think just the design of classrooms and the design of the layout, it's just a lot more inviting and accessible to disabled students than ever before. And so I know there's always room to improve,
Right.
But I think that we're well on the road to doing the right thing by those students.
Well, we're almost out of time, so I just wanted to ask you if there was anything that I didn't cover that you really wanted to emphasize as far as what we started at and where we are now.
Well, I guess that what I've really, really appreciated about the college, again, is how I have had opportunities here to try new things and take challenges that have just made all the difference to me. I feel like I'm always learning something new, and even though I'm 2 years away from retirement, I'm always presented with a new opportunity to contribute to the college. And for instance, the Gift Center, which is the Great Ideas for Teaching Center, I'm on the advisory committee for that, and the whole idea is teachers teaching teachers, and how can we, those of us who've been around for a while, how can we mentor new faculty? I loved teaching Introduction to Education because I got to be with students at the college who are thinking about becoming teachers. And I just had a thrill a few weeks ago when I looked in the paper and saw the name of a student that I had 20 years ago. He's now the principal of a school here in Prescott. And that idea that to love teaching enough that you can help the next generation of teachers come along, that's a wonderful experience to have at the college. And that's how I want to leave, feeling just like I did the first day I was grading papers on the bus. I want to leave the college feeling just excited about my career as I did then.
Oh, thank you very much.
Okay.